Hey everybody, I'm Sir Bjorn. I'm a Royal Peer, Knight, Pelican, and Laurel out in the West Kingdom, and I've always wanted to do a video channel where I answered questions about the SCA. So today we're going to give it a try. We actually have a caller on the line who has a question about arts and sciences competition documentation. Go ahead, caller. You are on the air.
Greetings, Sir Bjorn. My Laurel has asked me to enter my period tent stakes into the next arts and sciences competition. Any hints about how to do documentation?
Oh, that is a great question. I tell you, if you want to get better as an artisan in the SCA, learning how to do good documentation will always make you better. And I have plenty of tips that I can give you right here in this video.
But why do I even need to do documentation?
Okay, well, basically, it's three reasons. First of all, it makes you a better artisan to document your process. Second of all, you worked hard on this thing and you want to let people know how hard you worked. And third of all, it can really improve your score in an A&S competition, sometimes by as much as a third. But check with the people running the competition you want to enter for clarity on that.
So, what even is documentation anyway?
Well, that's a good question too. So, documentation for the purposes of the SCA is a piece of written work by the artisan that explains the historical context of the piece that you worked on and the process that you used to create it. And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Oh, okay. So, what should my documentation really look like?
Well, as far as what documentation should look like, I recommend that the original writing that you submit with your entry be no more than 1 page in length if you can help it. Why? Is basically boils down to two reasons. One, because you want to be concise and direct when you document your piece. And two, because you want the judges to actually read what you've written. And that means not turning into giant novels worth of original writing, but almost anyone can convince themselves to read through 1 page. However, this is not the only piece of paper that you're going to turn in, but we'll get to that later.
Speaking of judges, who even are these people that are going to be reading my stuff?
Well, all kinds of different people end up judging arts and sciences competitions, and sometimes there's only 1 or 2, and sometimes there's more, but they generally break down into 3 broad categories, and I'll cover them one at a time. Okay, so the first kind of judge I call the specialist artisan. This is someone who's noted in the field that your piece fits into, such as a woodworking laurel if you're entering a piece of furniture, or a blacksmithing laurel if you're entering tent stakes. This judge will want to see how well you know the common sources in your field and how your stuff measures up to what others in the field are doing. And this judge is why you don't try to BS any part of the documentation process. Ever. Okay, so the second kind of judge I want to talk about is the generalist artisan. This is an artisan who might have many different specialties that don't include the kind of art that you're working on. And this judges why you'll want to have a good guided tour in your documentation of what your art is all about and make sure that you documented your process really well, both in scope and in details. Okay, third and finally, but certainly not least, let's talk about the kind of judge called a consort royal. This judge is someone whose fighter has won a tournament, and as part of the ceremony that made them a sitting royal, they often have to give an oath to foster the various arts and sciences within their domain. And now they're making good on that promise by helping to judge an A&S competition. Do not make the mistake of assuming that any of these folks are dim or uninformed about medieval or SCA topics. The overwhelming majority are bright, accomplished people who might even be awesome artisans in their own right. Or they might be a different kind of awesome entirely. This judge is why you must explain your art as clearly and concisely as possible in language that regular people can understand.
Oh, okay. Now I know who I'm writing for. So what do I write?
Okay, so the question of what to write is actually an easier question than it sounds. It's just a little time consuming, but it's so worth it. I recommend that your work answer these following questions or categories of questions in whatever way and order seems best to you, and make sure it all still fits on 1 page. So the first question you want to answer is, what is this thing? What was this thing called in period? Did it have multiple names? Did this thing replace something and did something else replace it later? What's this thing made of and what could it have been made of in period? Okay, so the next question is pretty concise, and that's when. When did this thing appear in time, and how long were these things even around for? And after that, the question is who? Who was connected with these things in period? who made these things, who paid for these things, and who used or benefited from these things. Now, keep in mind, for example, with metalworking tools, all three of those might be the same person, but with illuminated manuscripts, all three of those were almost always different people. So the next topic you want to cover is, where did these things appear? Were these things unique to a small area, or did they appear in multiple areas, or were they everywhere? And did these things originate somewhere and then develop somewhere else? So the next question you'll want to answer is why? Why did these things exist in the first place? What need or desire were these things fulfilling, and what factors influenced how these things looked or what they were made of? Okay, so the second to last question is how? How did you make this thing? Was the process to make this thing different in period, and if so, how? What steps did you take to make this thing? Did you make the tools to make this thing as well as the thing itself, and what did the period tools look like? And what new things did you have to learn how to do or work with in order to create this thing? And how did you find out what you know about these things, and what sources did you refer to? And finally, the most overlooked question of all when doing documentation: who cares? You're obviously drawn to some aspect of this thing that you've made, or you wouldn't have made it. So make some effort to get across to the judges why this thing you made is so cool. Enthusiasm can be infectious, and that can lead not only to better scores, but more importantly, better feedback and better mentoring in the future.
Oh, okay. So once I'm done with the one page, what do I do then?
Okay, so that's good that you have your single page of original writing done, but I don't recommend that's the only paper that you turn in. In addition, I strongly suggest that you include a works cited or bibliography page, which details which specific sources you used or that influenced the work that you did. Ideally, you should also attach photocopies of the title pages of any book that you mention with that works cited page, as well as photocopies of each page of the book or printouts from each web page that directly inform the project, with the most relevant part of the page highlighted in yellow or another bright color. This way, the judges can hone in on exactly how you know what you say you know quickly. So, just to review, the packet you actually turn in would ideally look like this, stapled together neatly and in this order: a single page of original writing, your works cited or bibliography page, and then photocopies of the title pages and relevant interior pages or web pages of each source, in the order that they appear in the works cited page, with the relevant bits highlighted.
Well, that doesn't sound too bad. Anything else?
Yes, I recommend that you turn in at least 3 copies of your documentation packet, so each judge has their own copy to peruse. That way they can spend as much time as they want with your work, and they don't have to share. This is cheap, usually just a handful of change to make the copies, or even less if you're doing them on your own equipment, and it's totally worth it.
Well, that sounds okay. Oh, should I put my titles with my name when I put it on the documentation?
Well, that's sort of a trick question, because some competitions don't want you to put your name on the documentation packet at all. Some competitions do, and some competitions are cool with you putting your titles on. You need to reach out to the people running the competition and ask them. Get a direct answer. It really helps.
Oh, okay, I'm excited. So after I picked up my beautiful tent stakes, the competition is over, what should I do then?
So I recommend that there are 6 things you should do once the competition is over. Number 1, if there are score sheets, review them and see how you did. And if you got feedback written down, pay attention to it. Sometimes judges will invite you to talk with them afterwards for more specific questions and suggestions. Number 2, it's totally okay to ask the judges for help if you want more information or clarification, or if you just don't understand why you got a particular score. But number 3, also accept that some judges will give feedback that you just don't agree with, or that you don't find useful or enough, or they won't make themselves available for feedback at all. Remember that it's their vacation time too. Number 4, never badmouth another competitor or their work or anyone who gives you feedback. Number 5, if you keep getting the same feedback on your projects though, it's time to take that feedback more seriously. And number 6, get on with the next project. So, good luck with your tent stakes.
Ooh, thank you, Sir Bjorn. I thank you, and my tent stakes thank you.